The mansion stood like a monument to wealth and misery. Marcus Ashford had everything money could buy, yet he was watching his world crumble. His 3-year-old triplets were fading away, and the best doctors in the world stood helpless. Elena Martinez clutched her worn suitcase as she stepped through the service entrance. The employment agency had been clear about one thing: this job was temporary. 5 maids had quit in the past 2 months. The household manager, Mrs. Chen, looked Elena up and down with tired eyes that had seen too many hopefuls come and go. "You'll be primarily responsible for the children's wing," Mrs. Chen explained, leading her through marble corridors that echoed with emptiness. "Mr. Ashford is rarely home. The children have nurses, of course, but they need someone to maintain their rooms and handle the laundry." Elena nodded, following the older woman up a grand staircase. She had taken this job out of desperation. Her own daughter needed surgery, and the Ashford salary was triple what she could earn anywhere else. She expected difficult children, perhaps spoiled and demanding. She was not prepared for what she found. The children's wing was a medical ward disguised as a playroom. Monitors beeped softly. 3 small beds held 3 impossibly fragile children. Ethan, Sophia, and Lucas barely moved beneath their blankets. Their skin held a translucent quality, as if they were slowly disappearing. A nurse sat in the corner, checking charts with mechanical efficiency. "What's wrong with them?" Elena whispered. Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "The doctors call it idiopathic wasting syndrome. The children stopped eating 6 months ago. They've tried everything. Feeding tubes, medications, experimental treatments. Nothing works. They're dying, and nobody knows why." Elena felt her heart crack. These children were younger than her own daughter. She approached Sophia's bed, looking down at the little girl's pale face. Dark circles shadowed her closed eyes. Her breathing was shallow and labored. "Can I touch her?" Elena asked the nurse. The nurse shrugged. "They're barely responsive anyway." Elena gently took Sophia's small hand. It was cold, so cold. She began to sing softly, a lullaby her grandmother had taught her in Spanish. She didn't notice Marcus Ashford standing in the doorway. He was younger than she expected, maybe 35, with dark hair and eyes that looked like they had forgotten how to sleep. His expensive suit hung slightly loose, as if he too had stopped eating properly. He watched this stranger sing to his dying daughter with an expression Elena couldn't read. When she finished the song, she looked up and froze. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to overstep." Marcus shook his head. Sophia's hand moved. "I saw it. When you were singing, her fingers twitched." The nurse stood quickly, checking the monitors. Her heart rate increased slightly. "That's the most response we've seen in weeks." Elena felt something stir in her chest, an instinct she couldn't name. "May I try something, Mr. Ashford?" He stared at her for a long moment. This woman with kind eyes and calloused hands represented everything his world was not. Genuine. Warm. Real. "Do whatever you want," he said, his voice breaking. "They're dying anyway. The doctors give them 2 weeks at most." Elena spent the rest of that day in the children's wing. She sang to each child, held their hands, stroked their hair. She told them stories in a mixture of English and Spanish, tales her grandmother had shared about brave children who overcame impossible odds. The nurses watched skeptically, but Marcus noticed something they didn't. Each time Elena touched one of his children, spoke to them, sang to them, the monitors showed tiny improvements. Heart rate strengthened. Breathing deepened slightly. Nothing miraculous, but something. That night, Elena didn't go to the maid's quarters. She pulled a chair between the 3 beds and kept vigil. She had no medical training, no scientific explanation for what she felt. But every instinct in her body screamed that these children weren't sick in the way everyone thought. They were starving, yes, but not for food. They were dying from something the machines couldn't measure. They were dying from loneliness. Dawn broke through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the children's wing in shades of gold. Elena hadn't slept. She had spent the night moving between the 3 beds, maintaining constant contact. She held hands, hummed melodies, whispered promises that she wouldn't leave them alone. Marcus found her there at 6 in the morning, slumped in her chair with her hand still holding Lucas's tiny fingers. The boy's color looked slightly better. Not much, but enough that Marcus felt something he'd forgotten existed. "Hope. You stayed all night," he said quietly. Elena's eyes opened. She sat up quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I know that wasn't my job. I'll get to my regular duties now." "Wait." Marcus crossed the room, studying his son's face. "He looks different. They all do. What did you do?" Elena chose her words carefully. Mr. Ashford, can I ask you something? When was the last time you held them? Just held them, without doctors or nurses or machines between you. The question hit him like a physical blow. His mind raced backward through the months of medical appointments, specialists, experimental treatments. When had he last simply been their father? The illness had transformed him into a manager of their care, coordinating with medical teams, authorizing procedures, reviewing test results. He had stopped being dad. I don't remember, he admitted, the words tasting like ash. Elena stood. These children have every medical advantage money can buy. But nobody touches them except to insert needles or check vital signs. Nobody talks to them like they're people instead of patients. Nobody expects them to get better. That's not fair, Marcus said, but his protest was weak. Isn't it? Elena's voice was gentle but firm. I'm not a doctor. I'm not educated like you. But I know children. And these babies are giving up because nobody believes they can survive. They feel it. Children always do. Marcus sank into a chair, years of exhaustion catching up to him at once. Their mother left when they got sick. She said she couldn't watch them die. I threw money at the problem because I didn't know what else to do. I hired the best doctors, built this medical wing, monitored every vital sign. But you're right. I stopped seeing them. I stopped seeing my children. Elena knelt beside his chair. It's not too late. They are still here. They are still fighting. What happened next would be discussed by the nurses for weeks. Marcus Ashford, billionaire industrialist, walked to Ethan's bed and simply picked up his son. No medical consultation. No checking with the specialist. He lifted the fragile boy into his arms and held him against his chest. Ethan's eyes fluttered open for the first time in 3 days. Daddy? The word was barely a whisper, but it shattered something in Marcus's carefully constructed walls. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. Tears streamed down his face. I'm so sorry I've been gone. I'm not leaving again. The heart monitor showed Ethan's pulse strengthening. The nurse grabbed her phone to call the doctor, but Elena stopped her with a gentle hand. Give them a moment, she said. Some things don't need measuring. Over the next 3 days, the Ashford mansion transformed. Marcus cancelled all business meetings. He moved a bed into the children's wing. Elena showed him how to sit with each child, how to talk to them about normal things instead of symptoms. She taught him the lullabies, the stories, the gentle touches that reminded the triplets they were loved. Mrs. Chen observed the changes with cautious optimism. The other staff noticed that Mr. Ashford smiled occasionally now. The constant parade of specialists slowed to a manageable stream. But Elena knew the real fight was just beginning. The children were responding to love and attention, but they still weren't eating. Their bodies remained dangerously weak. Medical science said they were past the point of recovery. She found herself praying to her grandmother's saints, bargaining with God for 3 small lives. On the 4th morning, Elena was feeding Sophia ice chips when the little girl spoke clearly for the first time in months. The lady in the corner says we're not supposed to eat the food. Elena felt ice slide down her spine. What lady, sweetie? Sophia pointed to an empty corner of the room. The pretty lady. She visits at night. She tells us stories too, but they are sad stories. She says if we eat, we'll get sick like she did. Marcus, who had been reading to Lucas, went rigid. Elena saw his face drain of color. Sophia, he said carefully, what does the lady look like? Like mommy, but different. She's see-through. And she cries a lot. Elena and Marcus locked eyes. The nurses exchanged nervous glances. Mrs. Chen, standing in the doorway, crossed herself. That's when Elena understood the terrible truth nobody had considered. The mansion had secrets built into its very foundations. That evening, after the children finally slept, Marcus led Elena to his private study. The room smelled of leather and old books, a sharp contrast to the sterile medical environment upstairs. He poured himself a drink with shaking hands. My wife didn't just leave, he said quietly. Victoria died 8 months ago. The official story was a car accident, but that's not the whole truth. Elena sat down, her mind racing. The children don't know? They were too young to understand death. Everyone thought it would be easier to say she went away. The grief counselor said we should wait until they were older. Marcus laughed bitterly. Then they got sick, and I couldn't bring myself to add another tragedy to their lives. What really happened to her? Marcus stared into his glass. Victoria struggled with postpartum depression after the triplets were born. It got worse over time. She became convinced that something in the house was poisoned, that the food wasn't safe. She stopped eating. Started hiding food from the children, saying it would hurt them. We tried everything, therapy, medication, hospitalization. But she deteriorated so quickly. Elena felt the pieces falling into place. She died from malnutrition. Essentially, yes. Her organs failed. The doctors called it severe anorexia with psychotic features. He looked up, his eyes haunted. And now my children have the same symptoms. They stopped eating exactly 6 months after she died. The doctors said it was impossible for psychological trauma to manifest as a physical wasting disease in children so young. But what if they're wrong? Mr. Ashford, do you believe in ghosts? The question hung in the air. Marcus was a man of logic, of spreadsheets and scientific data. But he had just heard his daughter describe seeing his dead wife. He had watched his children respond to something invisible in ways that defied medical explanation. I believe my children are dying, he said finally. And I'll believe anything that might save them. Elena stood. Then we need to find out what your wife is trying to tell them. And we need to help her move on. Over the next 2 days, Elena became an investigator. She spoke to the former maids, piecing together stories of cold spots in the children's wing, of toys moving on their own, of a perfume that smelled like Victoria's signature scent appearing in empty rooms. She learned that the children had become afraid of mealtimes shortly before they stopped eating entirely. Mrs. Chen finally admitted that she had seen Victoria's reflection in windows, always watching the children with an expression of desperate concern. I thought I was losing my mind, the household manager confessed. I never told Mr. Ashford. What would I say? That his dead wife was haunting the children's wing. Elena asked Marcus to show her Victoria's belongings. He led her to a locked bedroom suite that had remained untouched since her death. Opening that door clearly cost him something. The room was preserved like a museum, everything exactly as Victoria had left it. Photographs showed a beautiful woman with the same delicate features as Sophia. In the early pictures, she glowed with happiness. But later images revealed the change. Her smile became strained. Her eyes held a hunted quality. In the final photograph, taken just weeks before her death, Victoria looked translucent, almost ghost-like already. Elena found Victoria's journal in a nightstand drawer. The entries grew increasingly erratic and disturbing. Victoria wrote about voices telling her the food was contaminated. She described elaborate rituals she performed to purify meals, only to become convinced the poison remained. She wrote about her terror that her children would suffer as she was suffering. The final entry made Elena's blood run cold. I'm protecting them. Even after I'm gone, I'll protect them. They won't eat the poison. I won't let them. She's keeping her promise, Elena whispered. She's still trying to protect them. She doesn't understand that she's the one hurting them now. That night, Elena did something that would have gotten her fired from any normal household. She set up a vigil in the children's wing with candles, photographs of Victoria, and items from her room. Marcus wanted to object, but exhaustion and desperation had stripped away his skepticism. If she's here, we need to communicate with her, Elena explained. We need to help her understand that the children are safe. That it's okay to let go. The nurses were dismissed. Marcus sat with Elena between the sleeping children. The candles flickered in still air. The room grew cold despite the heating system running at full capacity. Then Sophia sat up in bed, her eyes open but unseeing. When she spoke, it wasn't her voice. The voice that came from Sophia's small body was adult, feminine, and filled with anguish. Elena's grandmother had warned her about such things, spirits so desperate to communicate that they borrowed the voices of the innocent. Marcus reached for his daughter, but Elena stopped him with a firm hand. Victoria? Elena spoke calmly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Is that you? Sophia's head turned toward them with movements too smooth, too controlled for a 3-year-old. They can't eat. Don't you understand? The food here killed me. It's killing everyone. I have to protect my babies. Marcus made a sound like a wounded animal. Victoria, it's me. It's Marcus. The food didn't kill you. You were sick, sweetheart. You needed help that I couldn't give you. Lies. The word came out sharp. The doctors lied. You lied. Everyone said I was imagining things, but I felt it. The poison spreading through my body with every bite. I won't let it happen to them. I won't let them suffer like I did. Elena leaned forward. Victoria, listen to me. Your children are dying. Not from food, but from starvation. You're protecting them from the wrong thing. No. Sophia's body began to shake. No, no, no. I'm saving them. I check everything they eat. I warn them when it's dangerous. I'm being a good mother. You were always a good mother, Marcus said, tears streaming down his face. But you're hurting them now. Please, Victoria. Please let them go. Let them eat. Let them live. The temperature in the room plummeted. Frost appeared on the windows. The other two children sat up simultaneously, their eyes blank and staring. When they spoke in unison, it was still Victoria's voice, tripled and echoing. You don't understand what it was like. The fear. The certainty that something was wrong. Everyone told me I was crazy, but I knew. I knew my body was betraying me. And now you want me to trust that same food with my children? Never. Elena had an idea, a desperate gamble. She pulled out her phone and showed it to the space where Victoria's presence seemed strongest. Look. Look at medical reports from after you died. There was no poison, Victoria. The toxicology reports were clean. You had a disease of the mind, not the body. The food was never dangerous. The presence wavered. The children's synchronized movements faltered. It felt real, Victoria's voice whispered. It felt so real. I know, Elena said gently. Mental illness is real. Your suffering was real. But the poison was the illness itself, not the food. And you're passing that fear to your children now. You're teaching them that eating means death. But you're wrong, Victoria. You're wrong, and you need to stop. Marcus stood, approaching Ethan's bed. He looked at the empty air as if he could see his wife there. I failed you. I didn't understand how sick you were. I thought love would be enough, that our family would be enough. I'm so sorry, Victoria. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. But you can save them. You can let them go. It's the last gift you can give them. The room fell silent except for the soft beeping of monitors. Then, slowly, warmth began to return. The children's eyes fluttered, and when they opened again, they were themselves. Confused, frightened, but present. Sophia began to cry. Mommy's sad. She's so sad. Marcus gathered her into his arms. I know, baby. But Mommy loves you very much. She wants you to be healthy and strong. Elena felt rather than saw the shift in energy. Victoria's presence remained, but it felt different now. Less desperate, more peaceful. She pulled out the photograph of Victoria from before the illness, the one where she glowed with joy while holding her newborn babies. This is who you really are, Elena said to the room. This is the mother they need to remember. Not the fear, not the illness. Just the love. Over the next hour, something remarkable happened. Elena and Marcus talked to Victoria as if she were sitting with them. They shared memories of her at her best. They acknowledged her suffering without judgment. They thanked her for trying to protect the children, even as they asked her to trust them with their care now. The children listened, beginning to understand that their mother hadn't abandoned them but had been trapped by something she couldn't control. That she loved them enough to stay, even in death, but loved them enough to leave when it was time. As dawn approached, Sophia spoke in her own voice. Mommy says goodbye. She says to eat breakfast. She says we're safe now. The presence that had haunted the mansion for 8 months simply vanished. The temperature normalized. The oppressive weight that had hung over the children's wing lifted like morning fog. Elena slumped in her chair, exhausted. Marcus sat on the floor between his children's beds, looking 10 years older and somehow lighter at the same time. Will they be okay now? He asked. I don't know, Elena admitted. But we gave them permission to heal. Sometimes that's where healing starts. The doctors called it a medical miracle. Within 48 hours of that supernatural vigil, all 3 children asked for food. They started with small amounts, their damaged bodies needing time to remember how to process nutrition. But they ate willingly, without the terror that had gripped them for months. Dr. Sarah Chen, the specialist who had overseen their care, ran every test imaginable. The results showed no medical explanation for the sudden reversal. The children's bodies began absorbing nutrients normally. Their organ function improved daily. Within 2 weeks, they had gained weight. Within a month, they were sitting up, playing with toys, laughing. I don't understand it, Dr. Chen admitted to Marcus. By every medical metric, they should have died. Their recovery defies everything we know about wasting syndromes. What changed? Marcus glanced at Elena, who was teaching Sophia a clapping game. We addressed the root cause, he said simply. Just not the cause you were looking for. Elena had tried to resign twice. Both times, Marcus refused to accept her notice. Her temporary position became permanent, but the job description changed. She was no longer a maid. She became the children's full-time caregiver, with a salary that allowed her to afford her own daughter's surgery and then some. But more than that, she became part of the family. 3 months after that night, Elena found Marcus in Victoria's old room. He was finally packing up her belongings, preparing to let go of the shrine he had maintained. "She would have liked you," he said, folding one of Victoria's sweaters. "You have the same fierce love for children. The same instinct to protect." Elena helped him pack. She never stopped loving them. That was the tragedy. Love and illness got tangled together until she couldn't tell them apart. "Do you think she's at peace now?" "I think she finally trusts that they are safe. That's all any mother wants." Marcus pulled out a small box from Victoria's jewelry cabinet. Inside was a delicate gold locket containing pictures of the triplets as newborns. "I want you to have this. Victoria would want someone who loves them as much as you do to carry them close to your heart." Elena tried to protest, but Marcus insisted. As she fastened the locket around her neck, she felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. A sense of approval, of passing a torch from one guardian to another. The children continued to thrive. They started preschool, made friends, learned to ride tricycles in the mansion's vast gardens. They still remembered their mother, but now the memories were gentle. They talked about the pretty lady who visited them when they were sick, who loved them so much she couldn't leave until she knew they were safe. Marcus slowly rejoined the world of the living. He restructured his business commitments to spend more time at home. He laughed again, played again, became the father his children needed. And somewhere along the way, he began to notice Elena not just as the woman who saved his children, but as a remarkable person in her own right. Their relationship evolved slowly, carefully, with respect for the complicated grief and healing they had all experienced. A year after that fateful night, on the anniversary of Victoria's death, they visited her grave as a family. The children left flowers and drawings. Marcus said a final goodbye to the woman he had loved and lost. And Elena felt that warmth again, a blessing from someone who had moved on. 2 years after Elena walked through the service entrance of the Ashford mansion, she and Marcus were married in the garden where the children played. Sophia, Ethan, and Lucas stood as flower girls and ring bearer, healthy and whole and vibrant with life. During the ceremony, a butterfly landed on the altar, unusual for the season. It stayed throughout the vows, its wings catching the light like a benediction. When Elena said "I do," the butterfly circled the children once before flying away toward the sky. Mrs. Chen whispered that it was Victoria, giving her final approval. The nurses who had witnessed the inexplicable recovery cried happy tears. Dr. Chen, attending as a friend now, shook her head in wonder at the family she had once pronounced doomed. That night, after the celebration ended and the children slept peacefully in their beds, Marcus and Elena stood at the window of the children's wing, looking out at the stars. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, "for seeing what everyone else missed. For believing when the experts had given up. For loving them enough to fight for them." Elena leaned against him. "I almost left that first day. This job terrified me. But something told me to stay. Maybe it was Victoria herself, knowing her children needed help she couldn't give them anymore." "Do you think she's happy? Wherever she is?" Elena looked at the 3 sleeping children, their faces peaceful in the moonlight. Healthy color bloomed in their cheeks. Their breathing was deep and steady. They dreamed whatever wonderful dreams children dream when they are safe and loved and free from fear. "I think she's finally free," Elena said. "And I think she knows her children are exactly where they need to be." The mansion that had been a monument to wealth and misery became a home filled with laughter and second chances. The children who had been dying found life again. The father who had lost everything discovered that love could take many forms. And the maid who did the unthinkable learned that sometimes the greatest miracles come not from medicine or money, but from the simple courage to see ghosts for what they really are, love that hasn't learned how to say goodbye. In the end, Victoria's greatest act of motherhood wasn't staying to protect her children. It was finding the strength to leave when protection became harm. It was trusting that others could love them as fiercely as she had. It was letting go so they could hold on to life. The Ashford triplets grew up healthy and strong, carrying their mother's memory without being haunted by it. They knew they had 2 mothers, one who gave them life and one who saved it. Both were honored. Both were loved. And somewhere beyond the veil between worlds, Victoria finally rested, knowing her children were safe in capable, loving hands.